The night settled gently over the small town of Willow Creek, as if it had done the same thing 1,000 times before. Streetlights glowed softly, painting long shadows across empty roads. The world felt calm, unhurried, and safe. Inside a modest wooden house at the end of Maple Street, an old man sat quietly by the window. His name was Ethan Harper. At 72, Ethan had learned to appreciate silence. Not the lonely kind, but the peaceful quiet that arrives when the day finally lets go. He held a warm mug of chamomile tea, breathing slowly, carefully, the way his doctor had taught him. The clock on the wall ticked steadily. Tick, tick, tick. Each sound felt heavier at night. Ethan stared out into the darkness, watching the faint movement of tree branches swaying in the wind. This house had been his home for nearly half a lifetime. Every floorboard, every wall, every soft creak was familiar. And yet tonight felt different. He couldn't explain why. A subtle unease rested in his chest, not fear, but expectation, as if something long forgotten had finally decided to return. Ethan smiled faintly and shook his head. "Just old thoughts," he whispered. The house answered with a low creak. He stood slowly, joints stiff, and walked toward the kitchen. The light flickered on, revealing photographs pinned to the refrigerator, moments frozen in time. A younger Ethan, a woman with warm eyes, a small boy smiling wide, holding a toy train. Ethan's hand lingered on the photo of the boy. "So quiet tonight," he murmured. That was when he heard it. A knock. Soft. Measured. 3 gentle taps against the front door. Ethan froze. No one visited this late. Willow Creek was the kind of town where nights belonged to sleep, not surprises. The knock came again. 3 taps. His heartbeat quickened, though his mind remained strangely calm. He set the mug down and walked toward the door, each step slower than the last. When he placed his hand on the doorknob, a strange warmth spread through his palm. Not physical heat, something deeper, something emotional. He opened the door. The porch was empty. The yellow porch light illuminated nothing but still air and silent steps. Ethan leaned forward, peering into the night. "Hello?" he called softly. No response. As he turned to close the door, his eyes caught something on the floor. An envelope. Cream-colored, thick paper. His name written neatly across the front. Ethan Harper. His breath caught in his throat. He picked it up slowly and closed the door behind him, locking it out of habit. The envelope felt heavier than it should have been. Back in the living room, he sat down beneath the lamp and stared at it for a long moment. His fingers trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The handwriting was careful, familiar. The words were simple. "You promised you would come back." Ethan felt his chest tighten. Memories stirred, old ones, buried ones. The lamp flickered once. Ethan did not move at first. The sound from the hallway was faint, almost polite, like footsteps careful not to disturb a sleeping house. His breathing slowed, not because he felt calm, but because years of living alone had taught him how to stay still. The open door at the end of the hallway breathed darkness. The room beyond it had been closed for nearly 20 years. Ethan swallowed and rose slowly from his chair. The floor creaked under his weight, a familiar sound that oddly comforted him. With each step toward the hallway, the air felt cooler, heavier, as though the house itself was holding its breath. The footsteps stopped. "Hello?" he said again, softer this time. No answer came, but the light above flickered gently, not violently, just enough to be noticed. Ethan paused beneath it, placing a hand against the wall to steady himself. That room had once belonged to his son, back when laughter still lived here. He reached the doorway and looked inside. The room was exactly as he remembered. A narrow bed by the window, a wooden desk with old scratches carved into its surface, a shelf holding dusty books and a small metal train still resting on its tracks. Ethan felt his eyes sting. "I locked this door," he whispered. The curtains shifted slightly, though there was no breeze. Moonlight spilled across the floor, revealing something new, something that had not been there before. A chair, placed neatly in the center of the room. Ethan frowned. That chair belonged to the dining table. He had not moved it in years. Slowly, he stepped inside. The smell of the room was different now. Less dust, more warmth. As if someone had been here recently, breathing, waiting. He circled the chair cautiously. On its seat lay another envelope. His name again. Ethan sat down heavily on the bed, the mattress sighing beneath him. His hands shook more noticeably this time as he opened the letter. Inside, the handwriting continued. "You said it was only for one night. You said you would come back before morning." Ethan closed his eyes. The memories returned, sharper now. A hospital hallway, white walls, the sound of machines humming. A promise made too quickly, spoken too softly, by a man who thought he still had time. "I was afraid," Ethan said aloud, his voice cracking. The room responded with silence. Then the door behind him closed slowly. Not slammed. Just closed. Ethan turned his head. The handle twisted, and the door opened again. But this time a figure stood there. Not fully visible. Only a shape formed of shadow and moonlight, tall and still. It did not move closer. It did not speak. It simply waited. Ethan felt no terror, only a deep aching sadness. "I'm here now," he whispered. The figure shifted just slightly as if acknowledging the words. The old man leaned back against the wall, exhaustion washing over him. His eyelids grew heavy, his breathing slower. The chair in the center of the room creaked softly, as if someone had just sat down. Ethan's eyes remained fixed on the chair. It stood quietly in the center of the room, its wooden legs resting on the faded carpet, as ordinary as it had always been. And yet, the air around it felt occupied, as though a presence had settled there gently, without weight. The old man exhaled slowly. Years ago, he might have panicked. Years ago, his heart would have raced, his thoughts would have scattered like startled birds. But time had softened him. Grief had worn him down into something quieter. He listened. The house made its usual sounds, the distant hum of electricity, the soft ticking of the clock down the hallway. Nothing rushed. Nothing demanded attention. "Are you comfortable?" Ethan asked, his voice barely more than breath. The chair did not answer. Still, he felt something shift inside his chest, like a response that did not need words. He stood slowly and moved toward the window, careful not to turn his back on the chair for too long. Moonlight framed the glass, showing his reflection. Older, thinner, eyes carrying decades of unsaid things. Outside, Willow Creek slept. The street was empty. A single cat crossed the road and disappeared between houses. Everything felt normal, peaceful. Too peaceful. Ethan placed a hand on the windowsill and leaned his forehead against the cool glass. "I thought leaving would make it easier," he said quietly. "Doctors, hospitals, I couldn't bear it." The room remained still, but the heaviness deepened, like listening without judgment. "I told myself one night wouldn't matter," he continued. "I told myself there would be time." The chair creaked again, not loudly. Just enough. Ethan turned around slowly. The shadowy outline near the doorway had faded, leaving the room empty except for the furniture and memories. Yet the feeling of being watched remained, gentle and patient. He walked back to the bed and sat down, his movements tired. The mattress dipped beneath him, sighing softly. "You waited," he whispered. All this time. The lamp beside the bed flickered, then steadied. Ethan reached into his pocket and removed the first letter again, smoothing the paper with trembling fingers. The words stared back at him, simple and unforgiving. You promised you would come back. I'm here now, he repeated. I'm not leaving. The room seemed to breathe with him. His eyelids grew heavier, his body sinking into the bed as fatigue finally claimed him. The house no longer felt threatening. It felt welcoming. As his breathing slowed, another memory surfaced. A boy standing at this very window, waving goodbye. Ethan's lips moved faintly. I see you. The chair across the room no longer felt empty. And for the first time in many years, the old man allowed himself to rest. The room remained quiet as Ethan rested on the edge of the bed. His breathing had slowed, not into sleep yet, but into that gentle space between waking and rest, where thoughts lose their sharp edges. The house seemed to recognize this moment and softened around him. The chair stood where it was, unmoving. Moonlight shifted slightly as a cloud passed outside, dimming the room for just a second before returning. The small metal train on the shelf caught the light, its dull surface glowing faintly. Ethan noticed it and smiled. You loved that thing, he murmured. The memory came easily now. Small hands pushing the train back and forth, the quiet humming sound his son used to make as he played. It had always been the same tune, steady and repetitive, meant to last forever. Ethan leaned back and closed his eyes. The chair creaked again, softer than before. This time it sounded closer. He opened his eyes slowly. Nothing had moved, and yet the feeling in the room had changed, warmer, fuller, as though someone had stepped closer without touching the floor. I didn't mean to disappear, Ethan said quietly. I was afraid of watching you fade. His voice did not echo. It sank gently into the room and stayed there. The hallway clock chimed once. Midnight. The sound carried calmly through the house, not sharp, not loud, just a reminder that the day had ended and something else had begun. Ethan shifted his legs onto the bed, lying down fully for the first time. The mattress welcomed him, old springs settling into a familiar shape. He pulled the thin blanket over himself, feeling suddenly tired in a way that felt earned. The door to the room remained open. The darkness beyond it did not feel threatening anymore. It felt patient. Ethan turned his head toward the chair. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he whispered. I just didn't want you to think I forgot. The air grew still. Then very gently the chair moved. Not sliding, not scraping, just turning slightly as if to face him. Ethan felt a warmth spread through his chest. His eyes burned, but he did not cry. There was no need. I remember everything, he said. The lamp dimmed slightly as though the house itself were growing tired. Shadows softened. The room grew quieter, deeper. Ethan's breathing slowed further, each breath sinking him deeper into the bed. His thoughts began to blur at the edges, memories drifting without shape or weight. The chair stopped moving. The room settled, and Ethan felt, for the first time in years, that he was not alone in the quiet. The room stayed still after the chair stopped moving. Nothing rushed to happen next. The quiet seemed to stretch gently, like a long breath held without effort. Ethan lay on the bed, his body heavy now, resting fully against the mattress as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. The blanket felt warmer than before. His breathing was slow and even, each breath sinking deeper into his chest and settling there. The tiredness he felt was not sharp. It was soft, spreading gradually, loosening thoughts and easing memories. The house listened. Ethan turned his head slightly on the pillow, his gaze resting on the ceiling where faint shadows drifted as clouds moved outside. The patterns changed slowly, calmly, with no urgency. "I stayed away longer than I meant to," he said quietly. The words were not spoken to the room alone. They were spoken to the silence that had followed him for years, to the empty spaces that had waited patiently. The chair did not move again, but the presence remained. It felt closer now, not in distance but in awareness, like someone sitting nearby, not touching, simply sharing the same quiet. Ethan's thoughts drifted back gently this time. He remembered early mornings in this room, the sound of small feet hitting the floor too fast, the way the window would fog from warm breath on cold days, the quiet questions whispered before sleep. "Will you stay tonight?" Ethan swallowed. "I'm staying," he whispered again, more firmly now. The house responded with a soft settling sound, wood relaxing, beams adjusting, as if it had accepted the answer. Outside, the wind brushed lightly against the walls. A tree branch tapped once, then stilled. Everything moved slowly, carefully, as if respecting the calm that had taken hold. Ethan's eyelids grew heavier. He no longer tried to hold on to the memories. They came and went on their own, lighter now, less painful. They felt shared, understood. The lamp dimmed just a little more. Shadows softened further. The room grew quieter still, not empty, but full in a way that felt safe. Ethan's breathing deepened. In the chair, something shifted. Not the wood, but the feeling. A sense of settling, of staying. The night continued outside, steady and patient, and inside the old house on Maple Street, an old promise rested gently between memory and sleep, no longer sharp, no longer aching, just present. The night continued outside, steady and patient. Inside the house, time seemed to slow even more, as if the walls themselves had learned how to breathe quietly. Ethan lay still, his body resting fully now, no longer tense, no longer waiting for something to happen. The promise he had spoken lingered in the air. "I'm staying." Those words settled deep into the room, sinking into the floorboards, drifting up the walls, reaching the corners that had gone untouched for years. The house did not answer with sound, but with feeling, warm, steady, accepting. Ethan closed his eyes. For a moment he thought sleep had already taken him. But then a memory rose, not sharply, not painfully, but like a soft wave reaching the shore, a winter evening. The same room, a small lamp glowing near the bed. He remembered sitting on this mattress once before, much younger, his legs not even reaching the floor. Someone had been nearby then too, close enough that the darkness never felt heavy. "You don't have to be afraid," a voice had said long ago. The memory did not come with a face, just the feeling. That same feeling returned now. Ethan's breathing remained slow. He did not open his eyes. He did not need to. The chair beside the bed made the faintest sound. Not a creak, not a movement, just the quiet acknowledgement of presence, like fabric settling, like weight shifting gently. The house seemed to lean inward, listening. Ethan felt it then, a sense of being watched over, not watched closely, not carefully, but kindly. The way someone sits nearby when words are no longer needed. Outside, the wind softened further. Even the night insects grew quieter, their sounds spacing farther apart, leaving more room for silence. Ethan's thoughts drifted again, but this time they did not pull him backward. They moved forward. He imagined mornings in this house once more. Light returning through the windows, dust floating lazily in golden beams, coffee warming his hands, the door opening without hesitation. The house alive again. Not loud, not busy, just lived in. His chest rose and fell. Each breath felt deeper than the last. The heaviness in his limbs was no longer exhaustion. It was rest. The kind that settles only when the mind finally stops asking questions. The lamp dimmed almost to darkness now, casting only a faint glow, enough to remind the room that light was still there. Ethan's mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile, but something close. "I remember," he murmured, though he wasn't sure what exactly. The house seemed to understand anyway. The chair did not move. It stayed. And that was enough. As sleep finally began to pull him under, gently, carefully, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Not relief, not happiness, but peace. The kind that doesn't rush in. The kind that waits until it is invited. Sleep did not arrive all at once. It moved slowly, like fog rolling across a quiet field, touching everything gently before settling in completely. Ethan drifted in and out, not awake, not fully asleep, floating in that soft space where thoughts lose their edges. The house remained still, not empty. Still. Somewhere in the distance, a clock ticked. Not loudly, not urgently, just enough to remind time that it was still moving, even if no one was watching it closely. Ethan's dreams formed without images at first, only sensations. Warmth. Safety. The steady certainty that nothing needed to be done right now. Then gradually shapes appeared. He found himself standing in the hallway of the house, though his body still rested on the bed. The hallway looked exactly as it always had, yet brighter somehow. The walls were clean. The air felt lighter. At the far end, moonlight spilled through the front window, painting the floor in silver. Ethan took a step forward. The floor did not creak. That surprised him. This house had always spoken with sound, every step, every shift announcing itself. But now it moved quietly, as if it knew he was listening differently. He passed the door to the old living room. Inside, furniture stood in its familiar places, but no dust clung to their surfaces. The sofa looked comfortable again. The shelves no longer bowed under forgotten weight. He felt no urge to stop there. The kitchen waited ahead. When he reached it, the scent of something warm drifted through the air, not strong, just present, like bread resting after baking, like coffee left to cool. The table stood at the center, bathed in pale moonlight. One chair was pulled slightly away, as if someone had just stood up. Ethan felt a gentle tightening in his chest. He didn't feel alone. And for once that realization did not scare him. He sat down. The chair accepted his weight easily. No protest, no sound. On the table lay an object he hadn't seen in years. A small notebook, its cover worn, its pages thick with writing. He knew it instantly. He opened it. The pages were filled, but not with words he remembered writing. They were calm observations, quiet thoughts, moments preserved without urgency. You came back. The line appeared at the top of the page. Ethan exhaled slowly. Yes, he whispered. I did. The page did not turn, but the meaning settled. The house was not holding him here. It was welcoming him. In the bed, his breathing deepened further. His body surrendered more completely to rest. Muscles softened, shoulders dropped. Outside the dream, the lamp faded entirely, leaving only moonlight and shadow. Inside the dream, Ethan closed the notebook and placed it gently on the table. He stood again. The hallway called him back, not with sound, but with direction. When he returned to the bedroom door, he paused. This room felt different now, lighter, like it had been waiting for permission to let go. He stepped inside. The bed was made neatly. Morning did not rush in. It arrived carefully, like a guest who knew the house was resting. Pale light slid across the floor, touching the walls without waking them. The air carried a quiet stillness, unchanged from the night. Ethan slept on. His breathing was steady now, deeper than it had been in years. Each breath seemed to move through him without resistance, as if his body had finally remembered how to rest. The house listened. Wood settled softly. The curtains shifted with the breeze. Somewhere outside, a bird called once, then waited. Inside Ethan's dream, the house continued to exist, though it no longer asked for attention. He stood again in the hallway, but this time the light was different. No moonlight, no shadows stretched too long. Everything appeared balanced, calm, complete. The front door was open. Beyond it lay the porch, washed in early morning glow. Ethan stepped forward. The air outside felt cool and clean, carrying the scent of damp earth and leaves. The porch boards were smooth beneath his feet, worn by time but cared for. He leaned against the railing. The world beyond the house unfolded slowly, trees standing tall and patient, the sky pale and wide, clouds drifting without urgency. Nothing demanded movement. Nothing hurried him. Behind him, the house stood quietly, not watching, not waiting, simply present. Ethan realized then that the house was no longer holding memories like weights. It was holding them like stories. He turned back inside. The kitchen greeted him with warmth again. Sunlight touched the table, illuminating the notebook exactly where he had left it. He opened it once more. A new line waited. "You don't have to stay awake to belong." Ethan smiled faintly. "I know," he said, though his voice barely moved the air. He closed the notebook and placed it back gently. This time, he felt no pull to read further. The house had said what it needed to say. As the dream softened, the edges began to fade. The porch dissolved first, then the hallway, then the kitchen, each part slipping away without resistance. Back in the real room, Ethan shifted slightly. His eyes did not open. They didn't need to. His body adjusted to the morning light naturally, accepting it without alarm. The tension that once lived in his shoulders no longer returned with waking. Outside, the world continued. Inside, peace remained. Ethan slept a little longer. Not because he was tired, but because for the first time in a long while he felt safe enough to. The light in the room grew slightly warmer, but Ethan did not wake. Sleep still held him, not tightly, not loosely, just enough to keep him floating between rest and awareness. His body lay still, but somewhere inside, a gentle movement continued. In his dream, the house had not disappeared completely. It had quieted. Like a room after a conversation ends, Ethan found himself sitting in the old armchair near the window. The chair did not creak beneath his weight. It welcomed him as if it had been waiting, not impatiently, just patiently. Outside the window, the day had fully arrived. Trees stood calm, their leaves barely moving. Sunlight filtered through branches and settled in soft patterns on the floor. Dust floated slowly in the air, unbothered by time. Ethan rested his hands on the armrest. He felt older here, but not tired. Older in the way a well-read book feels older, full, understood. The house breathed. Not with lungs, but with presence. A slow expansion and release, like a steady rhythm that did not need counting. Ethan closed his eyes inside the dream. When he opened them again, the room had changed slightly. The walls were the same, but the weight they once carried was gone. No echoes of arguments, no lingering regret, just quiet. He stood and walked toward the hallway. Each step felt unhurried. The floor supported him fully, as if assuring him there was no rush, nowhere else he needed to be. At the end of the hallway, a door stood open. The bedroom. Not the one he slept in now, but the one from years ago. He entered slowly. The room was simple. A neatly made bed, a small desk, a window letting in afternoon light. On the wall hung nothing but a faint outline where pictures once had been. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed. He remembered this room, not with sadness, but with clarity. This was where he had stayed awake the most. Thinking, planning, worrying. He lay back gently. The ceiling above him was clean and quiet. No thoughts rushed in. No old fears followed. Just breathing. In the waking world, his chest rose and fell in the same slow rhythm. The dream and the body matched pace. Outside the dream house, the sun continued its path. Hours passed without announcement. The world moved, but Ethan remained untouched by urgency. Back in the bedroom, the light softened. The edges of the room began to blur, not disappearing, just easing away. Ethan felt a sense of completion, though nothing had ended. The house had shown him what it needed to. Rest was no longer something to earn. It was something to allow. As the dream faded, Ethan turned once more, not toward the door, not toward the window, but inward. His mind released its final hold. In the real room, he shifted again. A deeper breath, a quieter stillness. Sleep wrapped around him fully now, not as escape, but as arrival. The house in the dream dimmed its lights and waited, not for him to return, but knowing he always could. The night continued to hold Ethan gently, not tightly, not loosely, just enough to keep him drifting in a calm, steady place where time no longer asked questions. His breathing was slow now, deeper than before. Each breath moved like a quiet wave, coming in, going out, without effort. Inside his sleep, the house was still there. But now, it felt farther away, not distant, just quieter, like a memory resting peacefully rather than calling for attention. Ethan found himself standing in the kitchen. Morning light rested softly on the wooden table. The surface was smooth from years of use, worn gently by time rather than damaged by it. A single cup sat near the edge, empty, clean, waiting. There was no sound of clocks, no hum of machines, only the faint presence of air moving through open space. Ethan touched the back of a chair. It felt solid, reliable. He pulled it out and sat down slowly. His movements were unhurried, as if nothing important could be missed by moving slowly. Outside the window, a quiet street stretched forward. No cars passed, no voices rose. The world appeared paused, not frozen, just resting. Ethan placed his hands on the table. For the first time in a long while, his thoughts did not line up asking for answers. They softened, spreading out, losing their edges. In the waking world, his jaw relaxed. His shoulders lowered slightly into the mattress. Back in the dream, the light shifted almost unnoticed. It grew warmer, then steadier, like the sun deciding it did not need to prove anything today. Ethan stood again and walked toward the sink. The faucet did not drip. Nothing needed fixing. Everything was exactly as it should be. He looked at his reflection in the window glass. Not clearly, just enough to know he was there. Older, perhaps. Calmer, definitely. Not someone chasing time. Someone moving with it. He turned away from the window and walked through the house one last time. Each room greeted him without expectation. The hallway remained quiet. The bedroom stayed peaceful. The living room held its soft stillness. Nothing asked him to stay. Nothing pushed him to leave. That was the comfort of it. In his sleep, Ethan felt himself becoming heavier, more grounded. The dream began to settle deeper, folding in on itself like a blanket adjusted just right. The house did not fade suddenly. It dimmed slowly. Corners softened. Edges dissolved. Light became shadow and shadow became rest. Ethan lay down again, this time without choosing where. His body knew. In the real world, his breath slowed even further. A pause appeared between breaths. A calm one. A safe one. The house slipped fully into silence. Not gone, not lost. Just stored gently somewhere beyond thought. Sleep deepened. No images now. No rooms. No movement. Only warmth. Only rest. And the quiet certainty that nothing needed to happen next. Sleep held Ethan without effort now. There was no sense of falling anymore. No drifting. Just a quiet steadiness. Like resting at the bottom of a calm lake where nothing pulls and nothing pushes. His body barely moved. The smallest rise and fall of his chest marked time, though time itself seemed unnecessary. Inside his sleep, there was no clear image at first. Only space. A wide open stillness where thoughts did not form words. Where memories did not ask to be remembered. Slowly, gently, something returned. Not a place. A feeling. Warmth. Ethan sensed himself walking, though his feet made no sound. The ground beneath him felt smooth and even, like a long, familiar path he had walked many times before without noticing. There were trees nearby, but they did not crowd him. They stood at a comfortable distance, tall and quiet, their leaves barely moving. No wind. No urgency. Just presence. The sky above was soft and pale, neither day nor night. A resting sky suspended between moments. Ethan's steps remained slow. He did not wonder where the path led. It was enough that it continued. As he walked, his shoulders loosened further. The last bits of tension, small, hidden ones he hadn't noticed, began to release. The kind that live behind the eyes, in the jaw, along the neck. Each step eased another place. In the waking world, his face softened. The muscles around his mouth relaxed. Back in the dream, the path widened. A bench appeared to the side, simple and wooden, shaped by time but not worn down by it. Ethan sat without thinking, as if the bench had always known he would. He rested his hands in his lap. Nothing happened. And that was the comfort. No message arrived. No realization formed. Just quiet sitting. Moments passed without counting. The trees remained still. The sky stayed gentle. The space around him felt safe, complete, uninterested in changing. Ethan leaned back slightly. His breathing slowed even more, each breath longer than the one before, each pause between breaths deeper and calmer. In the dream, the bench felt warmer now, as if it carried the memory of sunlight without needing the sun itself. Ethan closed his eyes. Behind his closed eyes, there were no images. Only darkness, not empty, but full. A dark that rested instead of pressing. The path, the trees, the sky, all of it remained, but softly, quietly, like something placed aside rather than taken away. His awareness began to narrow, not sharply, gently. like a dimmer switch turning down light, one small click at a time. In the real room, nothing moved. The world outside continued on its own, unnoticed. Inside, Ethan slipped deeper. Thoughts no longer reached the surface. Sensations faded into warmth. Even the idea of dreaming loosened its grip. There was only rest now. Deep. Even, unbroken. The bench, the path, the trees, all settled into stillness with him. Nothing ended. Nothing began. Sleep held everything exactly where it belonged. The night did not move forward. It simply stayed where it was. Breath after breath came and went, each one shallow enough to be unnoticed, each one steady enough to never need attention. The old man remained on the bench, not asleep in the way people usually think of sleep, but resting in a quieter place beneath thought. Time softened. Moments no longer lined up. They rested beside one another like stones laid gently on damp ground. Nothing asked to be remembered. Nothing needed to be named. The path in front of him seemed longer now, not because it stretched farther, but because distance had lost its purpose. A path without a destination is only a shape, and shapes in the dark become simple. The trees held their positions patiently. Their branches did not sway. Their leaves did not whisper. Even the air between them felt settled, as if it had already found the most comfortable way to exist. The old man's hands rested where they were, fingers loose, palms warm. There was no urge to move them, no signal to adjust or shift. The body understood stillness better than the mind ever could. Somewhere far away, a sound might have existed once. A door, a voice, a passing thought. But distance had carried it off and placed it gently beyond reach. What remained was silence that felt full rather than empty. He did not follow his thoughts. He did not push them away. They simply slowed, then spaced themselves out, then quietly stopped arriving. The bench supported him without effort. The ground supported the bench. The earth supported everything. Layers of support, each one resting on the next, all the way down. There was comfort in knowing nothing was floating. Everything was held. Even the night sky seemed closer now, not above, but around. Darkness wrapped itself evenly, without edges, without corners. It did not press. It did not pull. It simply stayed. The old man's breathing found a rhythm that no longer needed counting. In and out became the same motion, like a tide that no longer marks time. Rest deepened not by sinking, but by spreading. There was no past asking for review. There was no future waiting to be reached. Only this quiet pause, wide and gentle, holding everything exactly as it was, and that was enough. The quiet did not change. It did not deepen suddenly, and it did not fade. It simply continued, steady and unbroken, like a long breath that never needed to end. The old man remained where he was, still resting on the bench. His weight was evenly held. Nothing pressed against him. Nothing slipped away. The balance felt complete. If he had opened his eyes, there would have been nothing urgent to see. So he kept them closed. The darkness behind his eyelids felt soft, layered, gentle, not empty, just unoccupied. A place where nothing had to happen. Breath continued on its own. Slow, quiet, reliable. Each breath seemed to smooth the space around him, as if the air itself was learning how to be calm by watching him rest. The trees remained unchanged. Their presence was enough. They did not need to move to prove they were alive. Stillness had become their language. Somewhere along the path, the idea of walking faded completely. The path no longer suggested movement. It existed simply as a memory of direction, nothing more. The bench beneath him felt warmer now, not from heat, but from familiarity. Like something that had always known how to hold exactly this amount of weight in exactly this way. The old man's shoulders lowered a little more, not because he tried to relax, but because there was nothing left to hold. In the waking world, his body mirrored the same release. Muscles softened without instruction. The jaw rested where it naturally wanted to be. The space between breaths widened gently. Thoughts did not return. There was no line of thinking, no gentle reflection, no story forming. Only awareness, quiet, wide, and unoccupied. Time no longer passed in moments. It rested. If minutes moved by, they did so without leaving marks. Nothing stacked up, nothing waited its turn. Even the sense of being someone began to thin, not disappearing, just becoming less defined, less important. The old man was not trying to become anything else. He was simply resting from being anything at all. The night continued to stay exactly where it was. No forward, no backward, no need. The darkness remained even and calm, holding everything in a steady balance. The air felt settled, as if it had already found the most comfortable way to exist and saw no reason to change. Breath after breath moved through him, smooth and unremarkable. Rest spread gently, filling every place that once held effort. There was nothing left to do. Nothing left to follow. Nothing left to finish. Only this quiet, spacious pause, wide enough to hold everything, gentle enough to ask nothing in return. And within that pause, the old man rested on, unmoved, unrushed, completely at ease. Nothing interrupted the stillness. It remained smooth and unbroken, like a surface of water that had never known a ripple. The old man stayed resting on the bench, his presence light but certain, as if he belonged exactly there. The night did not grow darker. It did not grow lighter either. It simply stayed consistent, steady, and calm, unchanging in a way that felt reassuring rather than empty. Breathing continued, quiet and automatic. Each breath passed through him gently, leaving no trace behind. There was no need to notice it, and yet it was always there, doing its work without effort. The bench remained firm beneath him. The ground beneath the bench felt solid and dependable, holding everything without complaint. The earth did not shift. It did not ask for acknowledgement. It simply supported. The trees nearby seemed closer now, not in distance but in familiarity. Their stillness felt companionable, like a quiet agreement shared without words. Nothing moved among them. No wind. No sound. Even the idea of sound felt far away, like something remembered from another place. The old man's hands rested where they had been, fingers loose and relaxed. There was no tension left to release, no final adjustment waiting to happen. Everything had already settled. Time no longer passed in any direction. It widened instead. Moments did not come and go. They existed side by side, gently overlapping, without edges. There was no sense of before or after, only a soft, continuous now. Thoughts remained absent, not pushed away, not forgotten. They simply no longer arrived. The mind had stopped offering commentary. It had grown quiet on its own, as if it finally understood there was nothing left to manage. The darkness around him felt even and complete, like a blanket laid carefully without folds or weight. It did not press against him. It did not pull him inward. It allowed. Somewhere deep within, rest spread further, not downward, not inward, but outward. It filled the space around him as much as it filled him. The boundary between body and space softened. Breath and air felt less separate. Stillness and presence felt like the same thing. The night continued to hold its position, patient and unmoving. It did not expect anything from him. It did not need him to respond. It was enough to remain. The old man rested without effort now, supported from all sides, by the bench, by the ground, by the quiet itself. Nothing waited to begin. Nothing waited to end. The calm remained wide and gentle, untouched by time, undisturbed by thought, and within that calm, everything stayed exactly as it was. The calm did not shift. It remained where it was, wide and steady, like a quiet field after dusk where nothing expects to happen next. The old man continued to rest on the bench, supported fully, without needing to adjust his position. The night felt settled now. Not paused, not waiting, simply complete. Breathing moved through him in a slow, even pattern. Each breath arrived softly and left just as quietly, like footsteps on thick grass that never leave a mark. There was no sense of effort in his body. No hidden tension remained. Even the smallest muscles had stopped holding on to anything at all. The bench beneath him felt less like an object and more like a certainty. It existed. It supported. That was enough. The ground below stayed firm and unmoving. Layer by layer, everything rested on something solid. Nothing hovered. Nothing threatened to fall. The trees nearby were still present, though their outlines had softened. They no longer stood apart from the night. They blended into it, becoming part of the same quiet shape. Darkness remained gentle. It did not cover. It did not conceal. It simply surrounded, evenly and without intention. The old man's awareness grew simpler. It did not narrow sharply, nor did it disappear. It became lighter, less interested in defining itself. There was no need to check where he was. No need to confirm that he was safe. The stillness itself carried that reassurance. Time continued to lose its structure. There were no moments arriving in order. No sequence to follow. Everything existed together, resting side by side in a calm arrangement. Thoughts stayed away. Even the idea of thinking felt distant, like a tool no longer required. The body remained motionless but not rigid. It rested naturally, like something that had finally found its correct shape. Breath and pause blended together. In and out no longer felt like opposites. They became one slow, continuous motion. The space around him felt full but not crowded, wide but not empty. A balance that did not need correction. The night stayed exactly where it was. It did not deepen. It did not lift. It remained steady, patient, and quiet, asking nothing and offering rest in return. The old man continued to rest, not drifting anywhere, not arriving anywhere else. Simply resting, held by stillness, held by quiet, held without effort. The stillness remained unchanged. It did not respond to anything, because nothing asked it to. The old man continued to rest on the bench, his presence light, almost blending into the quiet around him. There was no sense of waiting, no feeling that something should happen next. The night had already given everything it needed to give. Breathing moved on its own, slow and even. Each breath seemed to pass through him without touching anything, like air moving through an open space that had no walls. The bench felt steady, familiar, unremarkable in the most comforting way. It held him without effort, as if holding were the simplest task it knew. The ground beneath stayed firm and dependable, It carried the bench, it carried the trees, it carried the night itself. Nothing shifted, nothing sank. The darkness remained soft and even, spreading gently in every direction. It had no center and no edge. It did not gather. It did not thin out. It simply existed. The old man's awareness grew quieter still. Not smaller, just less concerned with noticing itself. The idea of observing faded, leaving only presence behind. There was no reason to move his hands, no signal to change his posture. The body had found a place where it could remain without adjustment. Thoughts did not return, not even faint ones. The mind rested like a surface that had finally smoothed itself out, free of marks, free of impressions. Time no longer suggested progress. It no longer pointed forward or backward. It rested alongside everything else, calm and unused. The trees nearby felt less separate now. Their shapes softened further, merging with the night, becoming part of the same quiet form. Nothing stirred among them. No breeze. No sound. Even silence felt settled, as if it had already found the most comfortable way to be. The old man remained at ease, held gently by the stillness around him. There was no effort in resting, no intention required. Breath and pause continued together, uncounted, unmeasured. The night stayed exactly where it was, wide, quiet, complete. And within that steady calm, the old man rested on, untouched by time, unmoved by thought, held without needing to be held. Nothing changed. And because nothing changed, everything felt settled. The old man remained on the bench, resting as if rest itself had become his natural state. There was no awareness of posture anymore, no sense of weight or balance. The body existed, but it did not ask to be noticed. The night stayed calm and even, not darker, not lighter, just quietly present, like a long pause that had decided to remain. Breathing continued at its own pace. Each breath arrived gently, lingered for a moment, and left without disturbance. There was no difference between beginning and ending. The motion had become circular, smooth, and unbroken. The bench, the ground, and the earth beneath all remained steady. Layers of stillness resting on layers of stillness, each one supporting the next without effort. The trees nearby felt distant now, not because they had moved, but because distance no longer mattered. Near and far had softened into the same quiet sense of space. The darkness felt familiar. Not something surrounding him, something sharing the same calm. Awareness continued to thin, not fading away, but spreading out so gently that it no longer gathered anywhere in particular. There was no center to attention, no edge to presence. Thoughts did not form. Even the idea of thought felt unnecessary, like a language no longer being spoken because there was nothing left to explain. Time rested quietly. It did not pass. It did not stop. It simply existed alongside everything else, unused and unmeasured. The old man did not feel sleepy anymore. Sleep had already arrived. Deep, even, unbroken. There was no sense of drifting forward, no movement inward. Rest had settled everywhere at once, filling every space evenly. Breath blended into stillness. Stillness blended into darkness. Darkness blended into rest. Nothing needed to be held together. Everything was already whole. The night continued to remain exactly where it was, calm and complete, offering nothing more because nothing more was needed. And the old man rested on quietly, gently, without effort, held by the simple fact that everything was already at ease. The stillness stayed with him. It did not feel like something surrounding him anymore. It felt like something shared. The night, the bench, the ground, and the old man all rested together, equal in their quiet. Breathing continued without intention. Each breath passed so softly that it seemed to belong to the night as much as to him. There was no effort in it, no awareness needed. The bench no longer felt firm or soft. It simply was, a place where rest happened naturally without instruction. The darkness remained smooth and even. It had no depth to fall into and no surface to rise from. It existed without direction, calm and complete. Awareness continued to loosen, not fading away, just becoming less interested in holding any shape. There was no sense of sitting now, no sense of posture. The idea of position gently dissolved, leaving only comfort behind. Thoughts did not return, not even quiet ones. The mind rested fully, like a room with its lights turned off, not because it was empty, but because nothing needed to be seen. Time rested nearby, unused. It did not pass. It did not stop. It simply stayed, unmeasured and unnecessary. The trees, the path, the open space around him all blended further into the same calm presence. Near and far became the same gentle distance. The old man remained deeply at ease. There was no sense of self to maintain, no story to continue, no moment to reach. Rest had spread everywhere evenly, like warmth that no longer has a source. The night stayed exactly where it was, wide, patient, and quiet, holding everything without effort. And within that quiet the old man rested on, unchanged, uninterrupted, fully at peace. The calm remained undisturbed. Nothing arrived to interrupt it, and nothing left to change it. The old man continued to rest, held by the same quiet that had settled long ago. Breathing moved in its own gentle way. Each breath felt less like a motion and more like a soft continuation, there and then there again, without needing attention. The night did not surround him anymore. It included him. Darkness felt evenly spread without edges or depth. It did not close in. It did not open out. It simply existed, steady and complete. The bench beneath him was no longer something to notice. Support had become a given. Like gravity, it did its work without needing acknowledgement. Awareness softened again, thinning until it no longer gathered anywhere. There was no center of attention, no place where experience collected. Thought stayed absent. Not pushed away, not forgotten, simply unnecessary. Time rested quietly nearby, no longer marking progress. There was no sense of earlier or later. Everything felt present at once, calm and unhurried. The trees, the path, and the open space around him blended fully into the same quiet presence. Shapes lost their edges. Distance lost its meaning. The old man felt neither heavy nor light. He simply felt held. Breath and stillness moved together. So slowly they were almost the same thing. In and out blended into one continuous calm motion. Nothing waited to begin. Nothing waited to end. The night stayed exactly where it was, wide, patient, and kind, offering rest without expectation. And within that rest, the old man remained, untouched by thought, unmoved by time, resting without effort. The quiet remained exactly as it was. It did not grow deeper because it was already complete. It did not lighten because there was nothing to lift. The old man stayed resting within it, steady and untroubled. Breathing continued without awareness. Each breath passed through him gently, like a slow current that never needed to be followed. There was no difference between effort and ease anymore. Everything felt natural. The night felt wide and even, not something above or around him, something that existed alongside him. The bench beneath him no longer felt like a surface. Support had become invisible, like something always present, never questioned. Awareness softened further, spreading out so evenly that it no longer gathered anywhere at all. There was no single place where experience lived. It existed everywhere, quietly. Thoughts did not return, not even faint ones. The mind rested fully, like a room long closed, peaceful and undisturbed. Time no longer hinted at movement. It did not point forward. It did not reach backward. It rested in the same calm space, unused and unnecessary. The shapes of the trees, the path, and the open space around him blended completely into the night. Edges faded. Distances dissolved. Everything felt close and far at the same time. The old man felt held without being held. There was no sense of sitting, no sense of resting. Only the quiet certainty that everything was already settled. Breath and pause blended into one slow, gentle rhythm. In and out became a single motion, smooth and unbroken. The night stayed where it was.
Patient.
Still, kind. Nothing waited for him. Nothing asked him to move. Rest had filled every space evenly, leaving nothing undone. And within that steady calm the old man remained, quiet, unmoving, completely at ease. The quiet did not change its shape. It did not stretch and it did not shrink. It stayed wide and even, like a calm surface that had never known disturbance. The old man remained resting within it, still seated on the bench, though even the idea of sitting had grown faint. Breathing continued in a slow, effortless rhythm. Each breath moved gently through him, so light it barely seemed to belong to a body anymore. In and out blended together, becoming a single continuous motion, smooth and unbroken. The night felt settled, not paused, not waiting. Settled in the way something feels when it has finally arrived at the place it belongs. The bench beneath the old man no longer felt like an object. It was simply support. Quiet, reliable, unquestioned. The ground beneath the bench carried everything without effort, and the earth beneath the ground carried even more, layer upon layer, all resting together. There was comfort in that. Nothing was floating. Nothing was unstable. Everything was held. The darkness around him remained soft and even. It did not gather in corners. It did not hide anything. It simply existed, steady and gentle, wrapping the space without pressure. Awareness continued to loosen, spreading so evenly that it no longer focused anywhere at all. There was no center of attention, no edge of experience. Everything felt distant and close at the same time. Thoughts did not return. Not slowly. Not faintly. They simply did not arrive. The mind rested fully now, like a lake with no wind, its surface smooth not because it was controlled, but because nothing disturbed it. Time no longer felt like something moving. It rested alongside everything else unused. There was no earlier or later, no sequence to follow. Moments did not line up. They simply existed together, quietly. The trees nearby had faded into the same calm presence as the night. Their shapes softened until they were no longer separate forms. just part of the same stillness. Near and far no longer mattered. The old man felt neither heavy nor light. He felt held, not by hands, not by effort, by the simple fact that everything around him was steady. Breath moved again, slow and calm, creating a gentle rise and fall that required no attention. Each pause between breaths felt long and safe, wide enough to rest in. The night stayed exactly where it was.
Patient.
Kind, unchanging. Nothing waited for him to act. Nothing asked him to respond. Rest had spread everywhere evenly, filling every space that once held effort or concern. The boundary between body and space softened further. The idea of having a body grew quiet, unimportant, distant. Sensation faded into warmth, and warmth faded into stillness. There was nothing left to do. Nothing left to finish. Nothing left to understand. Only this calm, open quiet, holding everything exactly as it was. And within that quiet, the old man rested on, deep, steady, and completely at ease. The quiet remained exactly where it was. It did not drift forward. It did not fall back. It stayed wide and calm, like a long breath that never needed to end. The old man continued to rest on the bench, though even the idea of a bench felt distant now. Support had become something assumed, something so reliable it no longer needed attention. Breathing moved slowly, gently, without rhythm that needed counting. Each breath passed through him like a soft wave, arriving without effort and leaving without trace. The night felt settled into itself. Not empty. Not full. Balanced. Darkness remained even and smooth, without edges or shadows. It did not surround him. It shared the same space with him, calm and unchanging. Awareness softened further. There was no place where attention gathered, no point where experience collected. Everything felt spread out evenly, like a quiet field where nothing stands out and nothing disappears. Thoughts did not return. There were no half-thoughts, no distant ideas. The mind had grown silent on its own, like a room where conversation has ended and everyone has gone home. Time rested nearby, unused. It no longer measured anything. There was no sense of duration, no feeling of passing. Everything felt present at once, without order. The ground beneath the bench felt solid, dependable, endlessly patient. Layer after layer of earth held everything above it without strain. Nothing needed to be held up by effort. The trees nearby had fully blended into the night. They were no longer shapes or objects. They existed only as a quiet sense of presence, steady and unremarkable. The old man felt neither awake nor asleep. He rested somewhere beneath both. There was no sense of self to maintain, no identity to hold together. The idea of being someone softened gently, becoming less important with each quiet moment. Breath and stillness moved together, slowly becoming indistinguishable. In and out felt like the same motion, smooth and continuous. The pauses between breaths grew wider, not heavy, but safe. Each pause felt like a place to rest, spacious and calm. Nothing waited to happen. Nothing needed to resolve. The night did not ask him to go anywhere. It did not invite him deeper. It simply remained, offering the same steady calm again and again. The boundary between body and space softened further. Sensation faded into warmth. Warmth faded into quiet. Quiet faded into nothing that needed naming. There was no effort left anywhere. No tension hiding. No thought waiting its turn. Only rest, wide, gentle, and complete. The night stayed exactly where it was.
Patient.
Still, kind. And within that steady calm, the old man rested on, untouched by thought, unmoved by time, held without effort, sinking naturally into a deeper and deeper sleep. Nothing shifted. Nothing needed to. The calm remained exactly as it was, wide and steady, like a quiet horizon that never moves closer or farther away. The old man continued to rest within it, so still that even rest itself felt unnecessary to name. Breathing continued, but it felt farther away now. Each breath moved softly, almost silently, like something happening in another room that did not require attention. In and out blended together, smooth and slow, without beginning or end. The night felt complete. Not finished. Complete. Darkness remained even and gentle, spread equally in every direction. It did not deepen, it did not thin. It simply stayed, holding the space without effort. The bench beneath the old man had faded into certainty. It no longer felt like wood or shape or surface. It existed only as support, unquestioned and reliable, like something that had always been there. The ground beneath carried everything patiently. Layer upon layer of earth rested without strain, without movement, without sound. Nothing above it felt heavy. Nothing needed adjustment. Awareness softened again, thinning until it no longer gathered anywhere. There was no point of focus, no edge of perception. Experience felt evenly spread, calm and unremarkable. Thoughts did not return, not slowly, not faintly. They simply stayed absent. The mind rested fully, like a room whose lights had been turned off long ago, not because it was empty, but because nothing needed to be seen. Time rested quietly nearby. It did not pass, it did not pause, it simply existed without purpose, unused and unnoticed. The trees, the path, and the open space around him had fully dissolved into the same calm presence as the night. Shapes no longer mattered. Distance no longer mattered. Everything felt equally close and equally far. The old man felt held without being held. There was no sense of posture, no sense of weight, no sense of effort. Breath and stillness continued together, so slow they felt like the same thing. Each pause between breaths felt wide and safe, like a gentle space where nothing could disturb him. The boundary between body and space softened further. Sensation faded into warmth. Warmth faded into quiet. Quiet faded into something that no longer needed a name. Nothing waited to begin. Nothing waited to end. There was no direction left to follow. Only this calm, open stillness, holding everything exactly as it was. The night stayed where it was,
Patient.
unmoving, kind. And within that steady calm, the old man rested on. Deeper now, quieter now, settled fully into a sleep so even and gentle that nothing could reach him there. Stillness remained. It did not announce itself. It did not change shape. It simply continued, wide and gentle, like a quiet presence that had always been there and would never need to leave. The old man rested within it without effort. His body no longer felt separate from the calm around him. There was no clear line between where he ended and where the night began. Everything blended softly, as if boundaries had grown tired and decided to dissolve. Breathing moved somewhere far beneath awareness now. Each breath arrived and departed without notice, slow and unhurried, like waves that no longer reach the shore. The pauses between breaths felt longer, deeper, more spacious, safe places where nothing could intrude. The night held its position patiently. Darkness felt smooth, like a blanket spread evenly across everything. It did not press down. It did not weigh anything. It simply rested, comfortable and kind. The bench, the path, the ground, none of them asked for attention anymore. They existed only as certainty, support without sensation, presence without detail. Time had fully loosened its grip. There was no sense of before or after. No moment followed another. Everything rested side by side, like quiet thoughts laid down and forgotten. The mind did not wander. It did not search. It did not listen. It stayed open and empty in the most peaceful way, like a sky without clouds, without stars, without movement. Awareness drifted outward, spreading thin and wide, until it felt like it belonged to the space itself rather than to the body resting within it. Sensation softened. Weight disappeared. Even warmth became faint, then gentler still. Nothing needed adjustment. Nothing needed correction. The old man remained exactly where he was, perfectly placed within the stillness. There was no urge to turn, to stretch, to shift. The body understood that it was safe enough to let go completely. Somewhere beyond thought, rest deepened again, not by sinking downward, but by settling more evenly, like calm water finding its level. The night remained unchanged. The silence remained full. The quiet held everything without effort. There was no sound arriving from afar, no memory rising from within, no future forming ahead. Everything unnecessary had already faded away. What remained was simple, a steady calm, a gentle pause, a sleep so smooth and unbroken that it did not feel like sleep at all, only like being held by the night itself. And so the old man continued to rest, deeper now, quieter now, completely undisturbed, as the stillness carried on without needing to move. The stillness did not fade. It did not thin or drift away. It stayed whole, steady, as if it had decided this was the place where it belonged. The old man remained within it, untouched by time, untouched by thought. His body felt lighter now, as though gravity itself had softened its hold. There was no clear sense of posture anymore, only the quiet certainty of being supported. Breathing continued, slow and effortless, but it felt distant, like something happening far away. Each breath moved through him without asking permission, without leaving a trace behind. The night felt endless in the gentlest way. Not long, not short, simply wide. Darkness wrapped around everything evenly, removing edges, smoothing corners. Nothing stood out. Nothing demanded focus. Even the idea of here and there had quietly slipped away. The path no longer felt like a path. Without a destination, it became just another part of the calm. No different from the bench, no different from the ground beneath it. Distance lost its meaning when there was nowhere to go. The old man's hands remained open and loose. Fingers rested naturally, as if they had found the exact position they had always been waiting for. There was no tension left to release, no effort left to make. Thoughts did not return. They did not knock. They did not whisper. The mind stayed open and clear, like a lake without wind, its surface so smooth it no longer reflected anything at all. Silence felt thick and comforting, not empty. It held weight, but a gentle weight, like a warm blanket placed carefully, never too heavy, never too light. Time no longer moved forward. It no longer moved backward. It simply rested, stretched out and calm, allowing everything inside it to remain exactly as it was. Awareness softened further, spreading thin, dissolving into the quiet around it. The sense of self grew faint, then fainter still, until it felt less like a person resting and more like rest itself. Nothing needed watching. Nothing needed remembering. Nothing needed to happen next. The night continued to hold its shape, steady and kind. The world felt complete in its stillness, as though it had reached a moment where nothing could be improved by change. And within that moment, the old man rested deeply, so deeply that even rest seemed to disappear, leaving only calm, endless, and undisturbed. Not the air, not the darkness, not the quiet that had settled so completely around everything. The old man remained exactly where he was, yet the feeling of where had grown faint. Location no longer mattered. The bench, the path, the trees, each had softened into the same gentle presence, equal and calm. Breathing continued, but it felt wider now, less contained. Each inhale blended seamlessly into the night. Each exhale returned without form. There was no beginning to a breath and no end to it. Just movement, slow and natural, like water finding its own level. The body no longer asked questions. Muscles rested without instruction. Joints held themselves without effort. Even the quiet awareness of weight had thinned, as if the earth itself had decided to do all the holding. The night did not grow deeper. It simply became more familiar. Silence wrapped itself closer, not tighter, but softer, like something trusted. There were no sudden sounds waiting to appear, no interruptions hiding in the dark. Everything that could have happened had already decided not to. Time felt distant now, like a concept remembered from long ago. Minutes no longer followed one another. Seconds no longer counted themselves. The idea of later had gently faded. Thoughts remained absent, but not forced away. They simply found no reason to return. There was nothing unfinished, nothing unresolved. The mind rested because it finally had permission to do so. The old man's presence grew quieter still, not disappearing, just blending. The edges of awareness softened, spreading thin across the night until it was hard to tell where he ended and the stillness began. The difference no longer mattered. Darkness felt warm now, even kind. It carried no mystery, no fear. It was simply space, wide, patient, and endlessly calm. Somewhere beyond understanding, rest deepened again. Not downward, not inward, but outward. It expanded gently, filling every corner of the moment, leaving no room for tension, no space for urgency. Nothing waited on the other side of this quiet. Nothing needed to arrive. The night held its breath, not because it had to, but because there was no reason to rush. And within that unhurried pause, everything felt complete, balanced, and perfectly still. Stillness remained, not as an absence, but as a presence so gentle it barely noticed itself. The night had settled into a steady balance, where nothing leaned forward and nothing pulled away. The old man did not move. Movement had lost its meaning. There was no need to adjust, no impulse to shift weight or straighten posture. The body had found the exact position it wished to keep, and it stayed there willingly. Breathing flowed on, quieter than before. Each breath felt thinner, softer, as though it had learned how to pass without being felt. Air entered and left without disturbance, like a familiar guest who knew the way. The bench beneath him felt less solid now, not because it faded, but because it no longer needed attention. Support was assumed, Trust had replaced awareness. Around him, the night continued to exist without effort. Trees stood without listening. The path waited without expecting. The sky watched without observing. Nothing reacted. Nothing responded. Everything simply remained. Thought had fully loosened its grip. There were no images forming, no memories knocking softly at the door. The mind had become a wide, empty room, with the lights dimmed low enough to forget where the walls were. Time no longer hovered nearby. It had stepped away quietly, leaving no trace of schedules or sequences behind. There was no before resting behind this moment, and no after forming ahead. Only a smooth, unbroken now. The old man's awareness spread gently outward. It touched the ground beneath the bench. It rested briefly among the roots below the soil. It drifted upward through branches and darkness, and then it stopped drifting altogether. There was nowhere left to go. The night felt complete, not finished, not concluded, just whole, like a sentence that didn't need punctuation to end properly. Silence thickened, but never became heavy. It remained light enough to breathe through, light enough to feel safe within. Rest deepened again. Not suddenly, not noticeably, but undeniably. The sense of being separate softened further. The boundary between body and space grew faint, then faint enough to forget. Everything shared the same calm rhythm now, as if following a single, quiet rule. Nothing asked for attention, nothing demanded change. The night stayed exactly as it was, unmoving, untroubled, endlessly patient. And within that patience, the old man rested more completely than he ever had before. The night remained patient. It did not hurry itself forward, and it did not drift away. It stayed balanced, like a calm surface of water that had forgotten what disturbance felt like. The old man continued to rest. His body felt lighter now, not lifted, not floating, but gently less defined. The edges that once marked where he ended and where the night began had softened. There was no clear line between warmth and air, between stillness and space. Breathing continued, but even that felt distant. Each breath arrived already calm and left without leaving a trace. There was no pause to notice it, no effort to guide it. The body knew exactly what to do, and it did so quietly. The bench, the ground, the earth beneath, everything remained in its place. Support did not shift. Nothing creaked or responded. Stability had become so complete that it no longer needed confirmation. The darkness felt smooth. It did not press against the eyes. It did not hide or reveal. It simply existed evenly in every direction, like a soft fabric spread carefully across the night. Thought had thinned further. There were no full sentences now. No beginnings or endings. Only fragments that appeared briefly, then dissolved before they could take shape. Even those fragments soon stopped coming. The mind rested open and empty. Time had fully stepped aside. There was no sense of minutes passing, no awareness of how long anything had lasted. Duration no longer mattered. This moment did not measure itself against anything else. The old man's awareness became smaller and wider at the same time. Smaller because it no longer traveled. Wider because it no longer needed boundaries. Everything fit comfortably inside this stillness. The trees remained silent, not holding back sound, but having no reason to make it. The path rested quietly, unconcerned with footsteps that might never come. The night sky felt close, not above, but present, wrapped gently around everything without weight. Rest spread again, not deeper, not lower, but steadier. There was nothing left to adjust, nothing left to release. The quiet had reached its natural shape, and it stayed there, complete and unchanging. The old man rested within it, held by nothing and everything at once. And the night, kind and unremarkable, continued to remain. The night continued without effort. It did not need to be guided or explained. It simply existed in its most natural state, wide and calm, settled into itself like something that had nowhere else to be. The old man remained resting, not waiting, not listening, not thinking. His body no longer felt separate from the bench beneath him. The idea of sitting had faded completely. There was only a gentle sense of being held, without knowing by what. Breathing happened quietly, almost invisibly. Each breath arrived already finished, already calm. There was no beginning to it and no clear ending. Air moved in and out the way darkness remained, without announcement, without change. The night wrapped itself evenly around everything. There were no edges now, no corners where shadows gathered. Darkness was smooth and consistent, like a soft blanket laid carefully over the world. The trees did not move. They did not need to sway or whisper. Their stillness was not forced. It was chosen naturally, as if motion had simply lost its purpose. The path rested exactly as it had been, not waiting for footsteps, not remembering old ones. It was only a shape now, resting quietly in the night, content to exist without direction. The old man's awareness drifted slowly, not traveling anywhere, but spreading thinner and wider at the same time. It touched nothing. It focused on nothing. It simply rested. Thought had fully loosened its grip. There were no memories returning, no plans forming, no questions rising gently to the surface. The mind had become open space, empty but not hollow, quiet but not blank. It felt full in the way a calm room feels full when nothing needs to happen inside it. Time was completely absent. Not paused, not slowed. Gone. There was no sense of how long the old man had been there. There was no curiosity about how long he would remain. Duration had lost all relevance. The night felt steady and dependable. Nothing would interrupt it. Nothing needed to. Even the idea of sleep felt unnecessary. Rest had already arrived and settled in fully without ceremony. The body felt warm in a distant way. Not hot, not cold. Just comfortably present, like something remembered faintly but no longer examined. The bench continued to support without complaint. The ground continued to hold without effort. The earth continued to carry everything quietly, layer by layer, deeper than thought could reach. Silence deepened again. Not suddenly, not noticeably, but undeniably. It did not press in. It did not grow heavy. It simply became more complete, like a puzzle that no longer had missing pieces. The old man rested deeper into this completeness. There was no awareness of resting, only rest itself. The night stayed where it was, unmoving, unchanging, kind, and within that gentle stillness nothing else was needed. The quiet did not change. It remained exactly as it was, steady and even, like a long breath that never needed to be released. The night had found its balance, and it stayed there without effort. The old man rested within that balance. There was no sensation of weight anymore, no feeling of pressure or contact. The idea of a body had softened into something distant, something no longer important enough to be noticed. Breathing continued, though it felt more like a suggestion than an action. Air moved in, air moved out, but there was no awareness of it happening. The rhythm belonged to the night now, not to him. Darkness filled the space gently. It did not hide things, it did not reveal them. It simply existed evenly, without depth or direction, wrapping everything in the same calm tone. The trees remained still. They were not frozen. They were simply complete. Each branch rested where it had always belonged. Each leaf remained quiet, as if sound itself had decided to sleep. The path no longer felt like a path. Without footsteps or intention, it became only a soft line in the ground, resting without purpose, content to be forgotten. The old man's awareness continued to thin. It did not drift away, it did not pull inward. It softened, like mist settling gently over still water, spreading until there was no clear center left. Thought did not return. There were no memories rising slowly, no words forming quietly. Even the idea of language had faded, replaced by a calm that required no explanation. Time had no presence here. There was no counting, no passing, no waiting. This moment did not sit between others. It stood alone, complete and untouched. The night felt kind, not in an emotional way, but in a simple, dependable one. Like something that would not surprise or disturb, no matter how long it remained. The old man rested deeper, though deeper no longer described movement. It was more like becoming familiar with stillness until stillness no longer felt noticeable. The bench, the ground, the earth beneath, all continued to support quietly. Nothing shifted, nothing weakened. Support felt endless and certain, extending downward without limit. Silence became almost warm. Not heavy, not thick, just gently present, like a steady hand resting nearby without asking for attention. There was nothing left to do, nothing left to release. The night stayed unchanged, holding everything exactly as it was. And the old man remained there, resting fully within that quiet, as complete and untroubled as the darkness around him. Nothing stirred. The quiet remained steady, as if it had settled into its final shape and found no reason to move again. The night held its breath without effort, calm and unremarkable. The old man continued to rest. There was no awareness of where he was anymore. The bench, the path, the trees had all softened into the same gentle background. Place had lost its meaning, replaced by a simple sense of being. Breathing went on quietly. It did not draw attention. It did not ask to be noticed. Air moved the way darkness stayed, naturally without instruction. The body felt distant now, not gone, but unimportant. Sensations had faded into something vague and comfortable. Warmth existed without a source. Stillness existed without explanation. The night felt evenly spread. No area felt closer than another. There was no center, no edge. Darkness surrounded everything in the same calm way, leaving nothing exposed and nothing hidden. Thought did not return. There were no images forming, no words lining up. The mind remained open and empty, like a quiet field with no wind and no footsteps passing through it. Time stayed away. There was no sense of waiting for the next moment. This moment was enough on its own. It did not lean forward or glance back. The trees remained quiet companions in the dark. They did not watch, they did not listen. They simply shared the same stillness, rooted and content. The path rested unnoticed. Without movement or memory, it became just another part of the ground, resting calmly beneath the night. The old man's awareness felt lighter still, not lifted, not floating. Just gently present, without weight or direction. Silence grew familiar. It no longer felt like something surrounding him. It felt like something he rested inside, the way one rests inside warmth or shade. Nothing asked to change, nothing needed to happen. The night remained kind in its sameness, offering no surprises and no demands. The old man rested on, held by that sameness, comfortable within a quiet that did not end or begin. And everything stayed exactly as it was. The night stayed steady. It did not feel long or short. It did not stretch or shrink. It simply existed, evenly balanced, like a quiet surface that had forgotten how to ripple. The old man remained at rest. There was no sense of holding himself upright, no awareness of balance or effort. The body rested as if it had always belonged exactly where it was, without needing to be placed there. Breathing continued softly. It no longer felt connected to thought or intention. Air moved through him the way it moved through open space, without resistance, without pause, without notice. Darkness felt familiar now, not something surrounding him, but something shared. It wrapped everything gently, without pressure or direction, leaving no space uncovered and no space emphasized. The trees remained motionless. They did not wait for wind. They did not anticipate sound. They simply stood, complete and untroubled, their stillness as natural as their roots. The path faded further into simplicity. Without footsteps or purpose, it became only a quiet shape, resting among other quiet shapes, all equally unimportant and equally calm. The old man's awareness thinned again, not drifting away, not narrowing inward, just becoming less defined, like a soft outline slowly blending into the background. Thought was absent. There were no memories returning gently, no ideas forming slowly. Even the sense of thinking had lost its meaning. The mind rested open, empty, and unbothered. Time remained irrelevant. There was no sequence to follow. This moment did not come from another, and it did not lead anywhere else. It stood alone, complete and untouched. The night felt dependable. It would not change suddenly. It would not ask for attention. It simply remained, offering the same calm again and again. The old man rested deeper into that dependability, not sinking, not falling, just remaining comfortably and fully. Silence felt settled now, not growing, not fading, just present like a constant temperature that never shifts. Nothing needed adjustment, nothing needed release. The night stayed exactly as it was, and within it, the old man rested without effort, without awareness, without need. The night remained exactly as it was. It did not shift its weight. It did not turn itself forward. It stayed settled, calm in a way that felt permanent, like something that had already decided there was nowhere better to be. The old man continued to rest. There was no awareness of sitting, no sense of posture or position. The body no longer felt arranged or held together. It simply existed, quietly, without needing to be checked or adjusted. Breathing moved gently in the background. Not deep, not shallow, just steady. Each breath passed through without leaving a mark, like air moving through an open window in a room that had been quiet for a very long time. Darkness felt smooth and even. There were no darker corners, no lighter edges. The night surrounded everything equally, spreading calm in every direction without effort. The trees remained completely still. They did not lean, they did not whisper, they did not respond. Their branches rested as if they had always been in exactly that position, and always would be. The path rested quietly beneath the night. Without footsteps, without memory, it felt less like a path and more like a gentle line in the ground that no longer needed to lead anywhere. The old man's awareness softened further. It did not pull inward. It did not drift outward. It simply thinned, like mist spreading slowly across still water until there was no clear center left. Thought did not return. There were no memories asking to be noticed. No plans forming quietly in the distance. No words arranging themselves into meaning. The mind rested open and empty, comfortable in its own quiet. Time had completely stepped away. There was no sense of minutes passing, no awareness of how long anything had lasted. This moment did not sit between other moments. It stood alone, complete and untouched. The night felt dependable. It would not change suddenly. It would not demand attention. It would not surprise. It simply stayed, offering the same calm again and again. The old man rested deeper into that dependability. Not falling, not sinking, just remaining, fully supported by something that required no trust because it never wavered. Silence felt settled now. Not growing, not fading, just present, like a constant temperature that never shifts, comfortable and familiar. The bench continued to support without complaint. The ground continued to hold without effort. The earth continued to carry everything quietly, layer by layer, far beyond thought. Nothing asked to be changed, nothing needed to be released. The night stayed exactly as it was, and within that steady stillness, the old man rested on, unmoving, untroubled, and completely at ease. The night remained exactly as it was. It did not shift its weight. It did not turn itself forward. It stayed settled, calm in a way that felt permanent, like something that had already decided there was nowhere better to be. The old man continued to rest. There was no awareness of sitting, no sense of posture or position. The body no longer felt arranged or held together. It simply existed, quietly, without needing to be checked or adjusted. Breathing moved gently in the background. Not deep, not shallow, just steady. Each breath passed through without leaving a mark, like air moving through an open window in a room that had been quiet for a very long time. Darkness felt smooth and even. There were no darker corners, no lighter edges. The night surrounded everything equally, spreading calm in every direction without effort. The trees remained completely still. They did not lean, they did not whisper, they did not respond. Their branches rested as if they had always been in exactly that position, and always would be. The path rested quietly beneath the night. Without footsteps, without memory, it felt less like a path and more like a gentle line in the ground that no longer needed to lead anywhere. The old man's awareness softened further. It did not pull inward. It did not drift outward. It simply thinned, like mist spreading slowly across still water until there was no clear center left. Thought did not return. There were no memories asking to be noticed. No plans forming quietly in the distance. No words arranging themselves into meaning. The mind rested open and empty, comfortable in its own quiet. Time had completely stepped away. There was no sense of minutes passing, no awareness of how long anything had lasted. This moment did not sit between other moments. It stood alone, complete and untouched. The night felt dependable. It would not change suddenly. It would not demand attention. It would not surprise. It simply stayed, offering the same calm again and again. The old man rested deeper into that dependability. Not falling, not sinking, just remaining, fully supported by something that required no trust because it never wavered. Silence felt settled now. Not growing, not fading. Just present, like a constant temperature that never shifts, comfortable and familiar. The bench continued to support without complaint. The ground continued to hold without effort. The earth continued to carry everything quietly, layer by layer, far beyond thought. Nothing asked to be changed, nothing needed to be released. The night stayed exactly as it was. And within that steady stillness, the old man rested on, unmoving, untroubled, and completely at ease. Nothing changed, and yet the stillness felt even more complete. The night remained exactly where it was, settled into a calm so steady that the idea of movement felt unnecessary. There was no forward, no backward. Only this quiet presence, wide and unbroken. The old man continued to rest. There was no awareness of the bench anymore, no sense of sitting or leaning. The body felt like a distant memory, present, but no longer important enough to be noticed. Breathing continued softly. Each breath arrived without effort and left without leaving a trace. There was no pause between breaths, no space that needed attention. The rhythm belonged to the night now, not to him. Darkness felt gentle and familiar. It did not feel heavy or deep. It felt even, smooth, and calm, like a soft layer resting over everything equally. Nothing stood out. Nothing was hidden. The trees remained still. They did not shift. They did not respond. Their branches rested quietly, as if motion itself had forgotten their shape. The path lay quietly beneath the night. Without footsteps or intention, it no longer suggested travel. It was simply a quiet line in the earth, resting comfortably where it was. The old man's awareness softened further. It no longer spread, it no longer gathered. It simply rested, light and unburdened, without a center and without edges. Thought remained absent. There were no memories calling back, no images forming slowly, no words arranging themselves into meaning. The mind felt open and empty, but not blank, quiet in a way that felt safe and complete. Time did not return. There was no sense of how long this moment had lasted. There was no curiosity about what might come next. Duration had lost its purpose. The night felt dependable in its sameness. It did not surprise. It did not ask. It stayed exactly as it was, offering the same calm again and again. The old man rested fully within that calm. Not drifting, not sinking, simply remaining, supported by something that never shifted and never failed. Silence felt settled and warm, not pressing in, not pulling away, just present, like a familiar presence that did not need to speak. Nothing needed to change, nothing needed to end. The night stayed steady and kind, holding everything gently in place, and the old man rested on, completely at ease as the quiet continued without interruption. The night remained still. It did not change as it came closer to ending, because it did not know it was ending at all. It simply stayed calm and patient, resting in its own quiet. The old man remained at rest. There was no awareness of beginning or finishing, no sense of arrival or departure. The body and the night felt gently aligned, both settled into the same slow rhythm. Breathing continued, light and distant. Each breath passed through softly, without effort, without notice. It was no longer something to follow. It simply happened, steady and kind. Darkness felt complete. Not deep, not shallow, just evenly present, like a soft space that asked nothing and offered rest freely. The trees stood quietly, unchanged. The path rested where it always had. Nothing moved, nothing waited. The world felt finished for now. Not concluded, not closed, but gently paused, like a sentence that did not need a period. The old man's awareness remained calm and open. There were no thoughts forming, no memories returning, no questions rising. Even the idea of listening felt unnecessary. Rest had fully arrived and stayed. Time felt distant and unimportant. There was no need to measure anything. This moment did not belong to a sequence. It was whole on its own. The night felt kind in its sameness. It did not disturb. It did not surprise. It stayed steady, offering the same quiet again and again, without asking for anything in return. The old man rested completely. Not asleep, not awake, just resting deeply and comfortably, held by a calm that did not shift. Everything stayed exactly as it was, and the night, gentle and unremarkable, continued on quietly, carrying rest wherever it was needed. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Thank you for listening.